Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the latest episode of the Writers Podcast. I have with me today guest King Lengling. I said that last name right, didn't I, Kim?
You did.
Good. I always do it. I'd ask the guests how to pronounce their last name, and then I do it, and then when I get to come to it, I forget again.
Right.
So Kim is quite the Renaissance woman, I guess I should say. You've got your hands and fingers in a lot of pots. You're a podcaster. Um, you're a book writer. You're into helping out with. You also do. You host a TV show, The Right Stuff. Is that still going on, or
At this time, it's kind of on hiatus. The network
okay?
is on hiatus, so I'm just
Oh,
waiting for
okay.
that to jump back in. But yes, did that for a year.
Cool. I'd like to talk to you about that a bit. And you're also involved quite a bit with veterans, I believe,
Yes.
and you have affinity for pets as well, for four-legged variety. So, wow, that's a lot to cover. And you're a podcaster. So, like I said before we started, I just feel like I can just sit back and let you do the whole thing. But we'll try to have a nice conversation going here. So, uh, I've mentioned a lot of things off the top, Kim, but why don't you add anything that you would like the listeners to know about you that I haven't already read off of your website?
Well, thanks first off for having me on the show. I
Oh,
appreciate
you're
it. And
most
it's
welcome.
always nice to meet new folks. So thank you.
Hmm.
Again, my name is Kim Lengling. I am an author, podcast host. I coordinate anthologies. So I like to bring other authors together and coordinate books. So, you got 15 to 20 different authors sharing their stories within one
Hmm.
book. Nonfiction is typically what I write. I am working on a bit of fiction, but it's one of those things that's been on the back burner for a while. I jump in every once in a while into that world and then I come back out for a while. So, but I am
Okay.
working on a fiction book. I've got two books coming out this year, which I'm super excited about. And as a veteran myself, I am a big advocate for veterans. Down here in the
Hmm.
States is where I'm from. So I've been doing that for well over 25 years, helping out veterans in need with an affinity towards female veterans with PTSD
Okay.
and homeless veterans or those soon to be homeless veterans with
Mm.
PTSD. So that's where my heart lies.
Hmm.
I do have an affinity for animals. I'm a dog lover, but I love all animals because they're all just pure souls, and I believe that they enhance our lives in many many ways. So
Okay.
that's
And
about it in a nutshell.
all right. And we're here to talk mostly about your latest book, which is Paw Prints on the Couch, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and before we dive into that, just a little bit more background now on your path towards becoming a writer. I'm just curious, growing up, were you a reader at all?
I've been a voracious reader my whole life.
Okay,
Yes.
awesome, awesome.
And
And what genres do you like?
you know, it's changed as
Mm-hmm.
as I've aged.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a
I've,
season now in my life where I do enjoy nonfiction, but I also
mm-hmm.
enjoy just kind of the softer, mellower, maybe romantic comedy type things, or
Oh,
just
okay.
something that's softer.
All right.
My teen years, it was all about Stephen King and
Very good.
that kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and it just kind of morphed. It changed it seems that every decade, every new decade that I enter is a different type of thing that I'm reading. But I love
Yeah.
to read historical fiction. Love
Oh.
that. And yeah, the some of the stuff that you don't need to think, you just need to smile and giggle at.
Mm-hmm.
That's the phase I'm in lately.
Okay. Yeah. I can.
And
I can.
paranormal stuff. I like reading stuff about
Yeah.
ghosts and witches and stuff like that too.
Cool. Yeah, I can commiserate with that because when I was growing up, I was hard SF horror reader pretty well, and occasionally fantasy, but yeah, mostly those two genres. And now, as I've gotten older, I sort of gravitated more towards mysteries, and I still like things if they have a paranormal twist. And
Yes.
I'm still a big Stephen King fan. I still read everything that he puts out, and he's definitely gone less horror as he's you know gone through his career as well, and I've always felt like he was my big brother. Like he's about a decade older than me, so I can always feel like he's writing to what my mindset is at
Right.
any given
Yeah.
time. So that's cool. That's why his work has kind of aged along with me, which I really appreciate. So it's good to know that you're a big reader because one of the big maxims of writing is to be a good reader, a writer, you have to be a big reader. Though I found out surprisingly, talking to a lot of authors, that many of them weren't big readers when they started out, which I always kind of blows my mind. But
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
yeah, so you've got the reading part down, which is good. Now your particular life journey, you graduated from high school. I don't know what your post-secondary education was, but
I went into the military.
you went into the military right off the bat?
Yep,
Okay,
right out of high school, went
okay,
into the military. I never
and
had
why did
any
you do that?
aspirations. Never had any aspirations to be a writer.
Okay,
It
so
was
so why did you choose the military?
because my family didn't have money for me to go to college.
Ah, okay,
And there
very
you
good.
go.
There you go, as simple as that,
And
and
I wanted out of my small town.
okay,
Yes,
and,
I'm not staying here and taking a crap job. I'm getting, you know.
very good. So did you serve abroad or were you
I was all stateside. I was in what they
okay,
quote unquote, we're gonna do air quotes here. I was in
okay,
during peacetime.
right,
Um, and when my time was done, I got out. It was literally about 6 months that I was honorably discharged and done with my time because I
mhm,
did not re up. But it was about 6 months right before the first Gulf War.
okay,
So yeah, it's around that time frame. Then the world kind of changed a lot from that point
right,
on. But
right.
yeah, I was in right before that, so that was considered peacetime,
Okay. So so your timing was good depending how you look at it, I guess.
depending on how you look at it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then, post-military, what was your next, step?
Well, yeah, I came home, ended up marrying my high school sweetheart
Mhm.
and had a daughter and, thought that, we'd grow old together and all of that. That didn't happen.
Mm.
So, life happens, divorce happens,
Right.
life journey. But
Right.
so I went through that whole phase, just growing, figuring out who the heck I was, raising
Sure.
my daughter, which she's, now a very successful young lady and she's just had her first child and she's married. So
Mm.
I look at her as one of my biggest successes, you know,
Right. Yeah.
raising a well-adjusted young lady.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but the
Especially in today's
writing didn't
crazy
come.
world.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, and, she's doing very well for herself, so
Great.
it's such a blessing to see that, to
Okay.
watch her journey unfold, but
Right.
my
So
writing never came came to me, I would say, in my early 30s,
okay.
and it was not that I was wanting to write anything, I was asked to give a speech at a
Mm.
veteran event.
Okay.
And it was a very large veteran event for me anyway. So there's over
Mhm.
800 people there. And to
Wow.
me, I've never spoken in front of a crowd and I had
Right.
never written a speech. And they
Mm.
asked me to do it. And I said, okay. So there I was, weeks before, frantic, trying, practicing in the mirror and in front of people. And I wrote this speech, and it was about my step grandfather, who was the last surviving World War I veteran in this
Mm.
area. So it was his story
Right.
of being an army veteran and serving his time in World War I and stuff like that. So it was his story that I shared, and he was the last man of the Last Man's Club. It's a very touching, heart-wrenching story,
Mhm.
and I put a lot of time and effort into talking to family members to get that story because World War I
Mhm.
was kind of a long time ago,
Sure.
and so I gave this speech in front of all of these veterans,
Mhm.
and there was television cameras there and newspapers there and radio
Wow.
stations there, and I mean, it was a very large event for my
Right,
area.
right.
And I finished, speaking with, cameras in my face and microphones,
Mhm.
and I did my speech. It was probably about 15, 18 minutes long, which is a long time to talk when
Mhm.
you've never public spoke before.
Right.
And I just, gave the speech and did it from my heart. And when I finished, it was total silence. And I'm like, oh, I must have really sucked. And then I heard, then I, because I was looking down and I looked up because I was like, "Oh gosh, there's not a single sound and there's so many people here." Then I heard people sniffing, and I looked
Mm.
around and I realized people were crying,
Oh.
and a lot of them. And then you heard like that one clap, and then the
Mhm.
whole thing just erupted.
Oh,
They're like
wow.
yelling,
A
whistling,
real movie
clapping.
moment.
It was, and I was like, "Oh my
Yeah.
goodness." And shortly after that, in the brouhaha of after the speech, uh,
Mhm.
the local editor to the newspaper approached me and said, "I would like you to consider writing a monthly article on veterans for the paper."
Oh,
And I
okay.
said, "I am not a writer, but
Mhm.
thank you very much. That's, very
Mm.
humbling. Thank you very
Mhm.
much." And he said, "Who wrote your speech?" And I said, "Well, I did." And he said, "You, my friend, are a writer."
Writer. There you go.
And that's actually how it started. That
Wow.
was that little spark that made me go,
Mm.
wow. So it was
That's more than a
someone
spark.
else
That's
seeing something
that's
in me that I
baptism
never
by
saw.
fire. Yeah. That's more than a spark. That sounds like baptism by fire to me.
Yeah. Yes, it was. It exactly was. But, it
Right.
was just one of those moments that I look back now and realize what a pivotal moment it was.
Right.
Because then I
Mhm.
eventually said, "Yes, I'll write this column." And I wrote that monthly column for 14 years.
Wow.
And
Mhm.
it turned a lot of times the columns would be shared elsewhere. So I was in different magazines, military magazines online,
Mhm.
and it kind of it took on a little life of its own. It was all volunteer stuff that I did. I didn't get a paid a dime for any of it, but for 14 years, I was able to do that, and that's
Mhm.
kind of how I honed my writing, I guess, because I've
Right.
not had training.
Right.
You
Right.
know,
Yep.
I write from the heart. That's
Mhm.
how I write. I write from the heart, and I write what I
Yeah.
feel, and
Yeah.
that's how it started, giving a speech.
Okay. So now it seems like I don't know what happened during those 14 years when you started doing all this other stuff with the podcasting and the TV stuff. Did that come? Was that more recent, or was that in that time period?
That's all when the pandemic hit.
Oh, okay. Wow.
That all happened in the last 4 years.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, 2020. Yeah,
Okay. So when did you get the thought to write a book? What point in time?
2020.
2020. Oh, even that happened at the same
Yeah,
time.
no,
Okay.
everything. The last 4
Everything.
years
Okay.
has actually a little less than 4 years, but, um, along with millions of other people across the
Mhm.
planet, I lost my job during that time.
Right.
And I was my background's sales and marketing, and I was a road warrior, so I went to visit customers. That was my job.
Okay.
And
Right.
when the world
Wow.
closed
Yeah.
its doors,
Mhm.
there's no place for me to go to.
Right.
And I saw it coming, knew it was
Mm.
coming, lost my job. And I thought, I'm at a certain season and age. I've no interest in revising my resume and sending it
Mhm.
out,
Right.
hoping I'll get a job because no one's hiring right now.
Right.
I mean, the world was just in chaos. If we all remember
Yep.
that.
Yep. Yep.
And I was like, I'm just too old for this to go through this all again. I just don't want to. And then I
Mhm.
thought, okay, Kim, give yourself 24 hours to be mad. So I did. And I did it really well.
Okay.
I was mad really. I did it really well for 24 hours.
Okay.
Then I woke up and went, all right, pull up your big girl panties. What are you good at? What do you like to do? And what are you passionate about? And make something
Mhm.
happen.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I like writing. I don't know if I'm any good at it, but I like writing. I'm passionate about
Mhm.
it because I put my whole heart into it. And I like meeting and
Mhm.
talking to new people.
Right.
Maybe I should look into this podcasting thing. And
Yep.
that's literally how it happened. And as I was doing that, I met a lady in the UK who was
Mhm.
just same thing happened to her, and she was starting up a small publishing house.
Oh.
And her and I just immediately clicked and went, let's put a book together.
Mm.
So that's how the coordination of anthologies started. And we published 3 books in the first 12 months. And
Mm.
it's a trilogy. It's a 3-book series called When Grace Found Me. And so it was published through her small publishing house. And then that kind of gave me the bug of like, I really like bringing people together
Mhm.
and giving people the opportunity to become a published author or to just share something that they've written that they don't typically write about,
Right.
if they're already an
Okay.
established author. So I really enjoy doing that, and I'm like,
Mm.
I can we kind of have a knack for this. So, and a lot of times the people that are in the books are people that have been guests on my podcast.
Okay.
So, you just all these different things, you're meeting all these different people,
Right.
and the same thing. Doors might open or they might just crack open, and you'll be like, "Oh, let me peek in there." Yeah,
Right.
let me
Yeah.
take a look in there and see where this might go to. And then
Yep.
sometimes it's like, I better shut that door. And then sometimes it's like, no, let's go through. So
Mhm.
that's what I just started doing. With the podcast and the books, and it's been so fun,
Mm.
frustrating, kind of scary sometimes, but
Yeah.
ridiculously rewarding.
Right. Right. Okay. So, uh, the anthologies that you were talking about, what type of stories were they? Was it nonfiction or fiction or
Nonfiction. They've
nonfiction?
all been nonfiction. The first three, the
Okay.
When Grace Found Me series, they are more faith based,
Okay.
people sharing about when God's grace found them and things like that.
Okay.
So those three books, that's the main focus of that is
Okay.
their faith based stories. And then the next one was called When Hope Found Me, and that's one I just published on my own, but it was still an anthology, bringing
Mm.
folks together. And that's
Okay.
semi faith based. I just asked people to share when hope was the main, was what got them through.
Right.
And so
Right.
that was the next one. And then after that, I was like, I've been wanting for years and years to do a pet book,
Okay.
and but a solitary, just my own, Kim and my
Sure.
own dog. And then I
Yep.
thought I'd try and go back and write it, but then it was still too sad. So I'm like, how can I do this? And everybody loves their pets. And so I'm like,
Right.
you know what? Why can't I do an anthology about pets?
Mhm.
You know, it's always been about people. And I'm like, well, the pets need their stories told.
Right.
So I started reaching out to people I knew and past podcast guests and say, especially the ones that have a pet, because on my show, I'm always like, if you like coffee and dogs, you're my new friend. you know. And so I reached out to those folks, and that's how Paw Prints on the Couch came about.
Okay. Very cool. And, so that is an anthology,
It
correct?
is. Here we go. Here's a
Okay.
little picture of it.
Mm,
Paw
cool.
Prints on the Couch.
Right. So, how many stories are in that?
I think in this one there's 16,
Okay.
because it starts off with myself as an introduction, and then my dog Dexter. He does an introduction as well from his point of view, because he is my
Very
office
good.
manager. Dexter is
Uh,
my office manager. He's the one who
okay.
keeps me on track,
Very good.
tells me where I need to be and what I'm supposed to be doing. And then
Uh-huh.
it ends with a goodbye from a dog that I used to have.
Oh, very
And
nice.
that was a big, big part of my life. So yeah, you're going to cry. You will cry during this book. So
Okay.
you want some Kleenex, but you're also going to smile and you're going to giggle, and you're going to,
Mm,
hopefully, if you had pets throughout any time of your life, you're going to sit there and fondly smile, and feel your heart
right.
just kind of swell a little bit. It's one of those kind of books.
Right. So how did you collect all the stories that you got into the anthology? You mentioned your podcast, and I assume you got some of them from there. Did you have an open submission call as well, or
I did put it out on social media,
okay?
and so I got a few, and it's surprisingly, I didn't get as many through that as I thought I would.
Oh,
Um, and then I put it out through a couple of pet rescue places.
okay.
I called the founders and said, "Hey, you think any of the folks that adopted pets from your shelter, do you think that they'd want to share their story?" She's like, "Oh gosh," so they're like, "Yeah." So they sent that out, and I have more than what I need now.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm not telling anyone no, because this one, Paw Prints on the Couch, but now I'm working on another one right now that's due
Mm-hmm.
to release in August of this year, called Paw Prints on the Kitchen Floor.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think word of mouth is just going,
Right.
because I have more than what I need for this one. So I'm like, all right, well, then I'll have another one next year.
Mm-hmm.
And that one will be called Paw Prints on the Back Seat. So it's going to turn into a 3-book series like the
uh,
Grace Found Me series, but it's been fun. I put it out on
yeah,
social media, reached out to people I knew through, and the folks that I met through my podcast. And I'm telling you, people have pets, they love their pets, they want to share their stories, and they
for
typically say,
sure.
"Yeah, I want to do it." I'm like, "All right, more the merrier."
Mm-hmm. And is there a common thread through the stories? Like, do people say that, I guess if you're motivated enough to wanna write a story about your pet, it has to be more than just an affection for the pet. Maybe the pet changed their life in some fundamental way, or it
Yes.
became a support thing because they lost a loved one or something like that, or
That yeah, there is kind of a running theme for all of it, and
Mhm.
it's and most of the pet stories are about animals that were rescued from shelters
Okay.
or adopted from no-kill shelters,
Right.
um, and a lot of times it's someone that was grieving the loss of a loved one, someone that lives
Mhm.
with PTSD or anxiety, someone
Mhm.
who's lonely, um, someone just needs companionship,
Right.
you know, and animals feel so much of your heart if you let
Mhm.
them, and they're so in tune with their humans, and their love is unconditional, and
Mm.
not many humans can say that about another human and
Right.
actually mean it,
Yep.
you know? So, animals have this way of kinda, worming their
Mhm.
way into your heart, and, I mean, I live with PTSD, and my dogs, there are certain days where it's like, "All right, that's how I got through."
Mm.
Is because they let me know, "Hey, hey, I'm here, I'm here." They
Right.
refocus you,
Mm.
they take you out of that little dark spot you might crawl into every once in a while, and they pull
Right.
you out of it by reminding you, "Hey, I'm here. I love you. Let's go for a walk."
Right.
You
Very
know?
cool. Was there, any veterans in the
In
anthology?
this one, no, and I was surprised by that, to be
Mm.
honest. But
Right.
I've talked to a couple of folks that and I'm very, very involved in the veteran community where I live and have been
Mhm.
for well over 25 years. A lot of my almost all my volunteer time is helping veterans. Um,
Mhm.
but I know a lot of them have adopted animals because they have PTSD or they have
Mhm.
service dogs. So I got that little thing in the back of my brain that will be a book one day of nothing
Okay.
but veterans talking about their service animals or companion animals and how
Right.
they have helped them because sometimes it's tough to get through a day, let alone 5 minutes of that day,
Sure. Sure.
so
Yeah.
and so many veterans I've met have amazing stories about them and their
Mm.
whether it's a dog, a cat, hamster, snake, horse, whatever the case
Right.
may be,
Yeah.
their pet has helped them, and
Mhm.
it's scientifically proven that animals can bring you down, They can
Mhm.
not bring you down in a bad way, bring you down from anxiety and, depression and things like that, it helps you. They're soothing. They're because they're pure
Yeah.
souls. They're just pure
Yeah.
souls.
I I just off the top of my head, I also would think that because like with a lot of, mental, illnesses or whatnot, it's the tendency is because people become so inner focused, on themselves, and, pets, make that connection to the outer world again and get them people out of their own head for a little while,
Right.
which is I think I'm just riffing here. I'm not a doctor or a psychologist or anything, but that's just my general view on why that, connection with,
Oh, no, I completely
other li
agree. I'm not
other
a
living
doctor
things.
either, but,
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
got a dog and I have PTSD and I know how they've helped me over the years.
yeah,
There's no
yeah,
denying it. So,
yeah, for sure. So you've mentioned that you've got 2 other books planned in the series. One's coming out this
this
summer?
August.
Is this August?
Yeah.
And what about the 3rd one?
3rd
The
one,
backseat
I'm
one?
I'm hoping next August of 2025. I'm trying to keep them a year apart because there are other books
Okay,
I'm working on that
right.
are outside of that realm. Um, but yeah, this one is gonna be Paw Prints on the kitchen floor,
Okay,
and next year's Paw Prints on the back seat.
very cool. And I'm curious because as you've admitted yourself that you don't have a lot of writing experience, as somebody collecting putting these collections together, do you hire experts? Like, do you have an editor or
Oh, I have an editor.
things?
Everybody needs an editor.
Right.
I've been
So
writing for since 2004. So I do
right.
have writing experience, but I would
Hmm.
never edit my own stuff.
Right.
Just
Yeah.
wouldn't happen. So
Okay.
yes, I do have a lovely lady. She actually lives on the west coast of the states. She
Hmm.
edits for me. I
Okay.
have folks that I have that read through and do like
For
proofreading.
free. Right.
And I'll just say, "Hey, you
Yeah.
want a free copy? Read it and then give me your
Yeah.
feedback."
Okay.
Kind of
I
beta
just
readers take
yeah.
type thing.
Yeah, I was just wasn't sure how much outside you help you had because you sound like you do a lot of things on your own, so
Well, there's certain things. Editing is not one I would want to do on my own because you can't
Right.
edit your own stuff
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
way it needs to be edited because I'm not unbiased.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
so
for sure.
anything I've written, whether it's my own book or it's a collaborative anthology, goes elsewhere, goes to an editor. And I have people that do the formatting for me and cover design and things like that.
Mhm.
I reach out to folks for that. And over the years, I've found people that I like and I stick with them.
Right.
As long as they're still doing their thing, I stick with them. But yeah,
Mm.
there's a lot I don't do because it's not my skill set.
Right.
So I'd
Right.
rather let the people do it, that know what they're doing, have them do
Mhm.
it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you have other projects on the go outside of the Paw Print series. Can you talk about those at all, or are they still too
No,
early?
I've got one. I'm gonna be publishing 2 books this year, which is I don't know why I was thinking I was gonna do that, but I'm going to. But the other book that I'm working is just all me. It's not an anthology. It's called Nuggets of Hope: Practicing Kindness.
Okay.
And that's something spurred from something that I started doing a couple years ago, which is literally handing out nuggets of hope to people,
Okay.
just approaching people,
Mm.
and saying, "I'd like to give you a nugget of hope today."
Okay.
And let me see if I've got one here. I had one. They're little polished stones. I
Oh.
and it's literally so I call them nuggets of hope. And when I feel I'm out and about and I feel nudged towards
Mhm.
someone, and I'll just look and say, "Oh, okay, that person." I carry these with me, and I'll be like, "Ah, okay, that person needs some hope today." And I
Okay.
literally just approach these strangers, and and I've been doing that for a little over 2 years,
Uh-huh.
and the interactions have been amazing and
Okay.
interesting. I've had
Mhm.
tears, I've had hugs, I've had laughter, I've had looks like, "Who are you, crazy woman?" And I've had anger. I've had, a gentleman yell in anger at me
Mm.
because I was trying to give him hope. And
Right.
so all of those interactions just kept running through my head and I'm like, I have to get those down. I got to get those
Mm.
written down
Right. Right.
because if everyone in their slice of the world tried to change their slice of the world for the better
Mhm.
by just giving out little nugget of hope,
Mhm.
could you imagine how the world would be?
Mm. Yep.
You
Yep,
know,
for sure.
you don't have to. And I was, someone had said to me years ago, "Who do you think you are thinking you can change the world?" And I had to bite my tongue because the
Mhm.
first things that wanted to come out of my mouth were not nice.
Right.
And I went, I know I can't change the world, but I can certainly change my slice of the world, one person at a
Sure.
time.
Yep. Yep.
And that's how it works because then it ripples
Mhm.
out,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so that's why my mission is to, shout it from the rooftops.
Mhm.
So yeah, you're one person. Can you change the entire world? No, but you can
Right.
have your part in it. Your slice of the world you can change. And people are like, "Well, how can I be a nugget of hope?" Yeah, smile at a stranger. You have no idea that person might be considering suicide, and you were the
Yeah.
only person that smiled at them in weeks, or even
Mm.
acknowledged their presence in weeks. I
Right.
had someone tell me that one time.
Yeah.
That is
Wow.
so heavy. That is so heavy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing in this really connected world how isolated people are. I mean,
Yes.
COVID was, like a like a real high pressure point for a lot of people. But and who knows, what's going to happen down the road. I mean, just you have one pandemic doesn't mean you're not going to have another one. But
Right.
fortunately, they don't seem to come that often. I think like the last big one was the Spanish flu before this COVID one. So, but it is a weird dichotomy how connected we are, yet how isolated we've become. And I
Yes.
think social media is definitely a double-edged sword in that respect.
Because
And
you've got a whole
unfortunately,
generation or 2, maybe we're on the 2nd generation now that's grown up with social media,
yeah,
and
yeah,
they don't know how to interact with people.
yeah, which is scary.
if they didn't grow up that way. No, it is
Yeah,
scary, it's
yeah.
frightening.
Yes,
If
it
they didn't
is.
grow up doing that, I grew up, my mom would be like, "You kids get outside. I can't stand you being underfoot. Go outside and play." We're
Yeah,
like, "Well, what do we do?" She's like, "I don't know, make up a game."
yeah,
So, we were outside.
yeah.
We had to be outside doing stuff. There was no
Yeah,
cell
and
phones
when I think
and all of
about
that
how
stuff.
outside we were, and if you did that with your kids today, you'd probably be locked up for child neglect or something like
Is
that,
it crazy?
It
Well,
was so
with
different.
my daughter,
We'd be
I did
gone
the
all
same thing
day.
with my daughter.
Yeah.
She's like, "But I don't have any brothers or sisters." "You never gave me." This is how she would say it. "You didn't give me brothers or sisters. I don't have anybody to
Right,
play with." I'm like, "Take the
right.
dog outside and go play."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's, different times nowadays,
Yeah,
that's for sure.
yeah.
Okay, so you've got those 2 books coming out this year, and I do believe you mentioned that you're toying with doing, fiction work, or
Yes.
and
And I
what
have
would that
one,
be?
and that one is, it's like completely outside of what I normally do, but it's been a story in my head for years, and it's
Okay.
gonna be about wood sprites and fairies,
Oh, wow.
and the critters. They like the animals, my dogs who are no longer
Okay.
with me, they play a big
Mhm.
part in the stories.
Oh, cool.
So
Alright.
it's all about critters and wood sprites and fairies, and they teach the humans how to be better humans.
Oh, okay, and do you have a name yet for this?
I do not know.
And did you plan it as a series or a standalone,
I
or
don't know yet.
you don't know yet? Okay,
I'm t I
okay.
just when I get the bug and it hits me in the head, I sit down and I'll write, and I'll, 2 or 3 hours later, I'll sit up and go, "Oh, wow, I wrote for a long time." And then I
Mhm.
don't come back to it for months.
Okay.
It's just one
Yeah,
of those things, and
yeah.
I don't pressure myself. I write when it hits me to write.
Okay.
Even for like my anthologies and stuff, because I have so many stories written that are just
Mhm.
sitting waiting. They're just waiting for something.
Right.
And so, but if a story pops in my head, and I always tell folks when I'm outside a lot as much as I can because that's where I breathe, that's where I
Mm.
pray, and that's where the stories come to me. And
Okay.
when a story comes to me and I get back to the house, I'll be like, "Oh, I've got to get that down." So I'll get in front of my computer, or I'll grab the nearest notebook that I have, or
Right.
I'll grab my phone and record it into my phone, these little short stories that pop in my head, or a character.
Okay.
And I'll be like, "Well, what am I gonna do with her?" But, I don't know. But I have to make sure I don't lose her.
Right.
That little fairy that
Right.
wears, an acorn thing for a hat. I have to
Mhm.
get her down because I know what they look like. I know what they
Right.
wear. I know I can hear their accents,
Mhm.
you know. So they're in there. They're in my brain. I
Right.
just have to bring them all together as
Mm.
they're meant to be to make it a story. And I don't know if it'll be, young adult or if it's going to be children's. Maybe it's going to be a series of children's books
Right.
and lessons.
Mhm.
I don't know yet. That part hasn't come to me. I'm just the characters are still building themselves, and still every
Okay.
once in a while they just come, and when I'm outside walking in the woods,
Mhm.
they whisper a little bit of something more about their story. So I have to hurry up and get that down when I hear the whispers.
Very cool. Well, I wish you all the luck with that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, just turning away from books then, your books for a little bit, if you don't mind. I'm curious about your podcasting and TV stuff. So, is there anything that you can say about those 2 things?
The TV thing, the network is on a bit of a hiatus.
Okay.
But I did record shows in there. They were, well, I think they're still up. I haven't checked. But the
Mhm.
network was called Believe in Your Dreams Network, and
Okay.
it's online streaming, so it was like a subscription-based type thing, and that was
Okay.
up for a little over a year, but it hasn't nothing new. I have not done anything new for over a year,
Okay.
and literally just heard from the network, and they said, "Hey, we're planning up some meetings. Want to see who still wants to who's
Mhm.
sticking with us to move forward." So
Okay.
I want to attend those meetings and see where the network might be going because it might not be a fit for me anymore.
Okay.
You
And
never know. But that
and
was
what did you
super
do in the
fun,
show?
and
Yeah.
I
What
I
did you do?
learned a lot. I learned a lot.
Okay.
Um, and then my podcast I started at the beginning of the pandemic,
Mhm.
and it's called Let Fear Bounce. And I named it that because fear was floating everywhere at that time,
Okay.
all over the place in the world. It came at you from every direction: radio, television, newspapers, whatever.
Okay.
and I decided not letting that land. So let fear bounce. That's how the name of my podcast came. And I just started reaching out to people and said, what are you afraid of?
Mhm.
And share your fears and how you overcome them, and share with others how they can, maybe you can help them overcome their fears, and just kind of morphed from there. Now I'm in my fourth season, doing it fourth year, and I've
Mm.
had uh over 200 guests, so going
Wow.
strong. It's fun. It's been fun.
Very cool. And is that available on, s s certain
All listening
podcast sites?
platforms. It's
Oh,
available
okay.
on all
Okay.
podcast platforms as well as on YouTube. It's on
That's on
YouTube,
YouTube as
under just
well.
Let Fear Bounce, so you can find it on
Okay.
YouTube as well.
Okay, very cool. And all your books can be found, on your website, and, I assume they're on Amazon as well and all those kind of
Yeah,
places, or
Amazon.com is the easiest place to get all the books, and if you wanna contact me or see what else I'm up to, best place, just go to my website, which is kimlanglingauthor.com.
very cool. Well, Kim, is there anything else that you wanted to mention that hasn't come up yet over the course
No,
of our
this has been a
no?
pleasure. I appreciate you having
Okay.
me on.
No, you're very welcome. I saw very inspiring, listening to you, to all the things that you've done. So I wish you all the best with all your future projects.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Okay, take care now, Kim.
Alright, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.